The US Air Force is carrying out a curious modernization that will end up breaking an unimaginable record. An entire fleet of bombers over 100 years old flying, and yet, this will be a great choice. Hey guys from Aerocast, this is Gabriel Toledano and welcome to your aviation channel here on YouTube. 78 years ago, in the penultimate year of World War II, in 1944, the United States realized that the introduction of B-29 bombers into combat meant the war would be won in the air, even before its end. Future wars would depend on large bomber planes dropping atomic bombs thousands of miles over hostile territory, and there was nothing in the American arsenal capable of that yet. The attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were made with Japanese air defenses already weakened in 1945, posing almost no danger to the bombers. Then the race began for an experimental project that would be the bomber of the future. Specifications for a new strategic long-range bomber were distributed to manufacturers who almost immediately submitted designs tailor-made to the new requirements. Several experimental prototypes were designed and built, including Northrop's YB-35 and YB-49 flying wings. Look at them here, one with propeller engines and the other with turbojet engines. Flying wing-shaped planes at that time were still very unstable without the modern fly-by-wire systems that the B-2 Spirit has today. Boeing entered the fray with the Model 462, which was basically a B-29 with 6 engines and even larger fuselage and wings, but it couldn't meet all the requirements. After some modifications, they decided to use the B-47 Stratojet bomber design, adding 2 more engines and increasing its area by almost threefold to be able to fly high, carrying a lot of democracy in the shape of bombs and fuel. The result was the XB-52. 2 units were built for testing before going into production. It doesn't even look like the same plane we know today, which is the B-52 in its hotel version. With a top speed of 560 knots, a ceiling of 50,000 feet, and virtually unlimited range with in-flight refueling capability, the B-52 is able to deliver 31 tons of bombs anywhere on planet Earth. And for 7 decades, hundreds of them remained on permanent patrol, fully loaded with bombs awaiting for an order of whatever president was in office at the time to head towards their targets and retaliate against a Soviet attack, bringing a quick end to the nuclear war which everyone feared would be the end of the world. The Cold War ended in 1991, with the fall of the Soviet Union without actually having an armed conflict. More and more modern bombers were developed, such as the B-1 Lancer, the B-2 Spirit, and the plane that looks like something straight out of a Star Wars movie, the XB-70 Valkyrie bomber, that did not become operational, but even with these new bombers, no one had the courage to retire the entire fleet of 744 B-52s. They were just too good, too cheap to operate, and too efficient. All B-52s were slated to be placed in museums in the mid-70s with the arrival of the B-1 bomber, but were eventually refurbished, technologically upgraded, and kept in impeccable service. They played a key role in the Vietnam War, and during the 2 Gulf Wars they were responsible twice for demoralizing Saddam Hussein's troops by pouring tons of democracy into the head of the Iraqi Republican Guard. After being extensively upgraded, today's B-52s carry much more than the conventional and nuclear bombs of their early design. In addition, the B-52s launch precision-guided missiles, cruise missiles, experimental planes, GPS-guided or laser-guided bombs, and are used whenever needed in places like Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. Even the new hypersonic missiles that are under development could be fired by the B-52s in the future. Now, 70 years after its first flight, the grandson of an early B-52 crew member can probably fly the same plane his grandfather flew. And it looks like that the great-grandchildren of these veterans will carry on the tradition well into the mid-2050s, 100 years later. The last and the youngest B-52 rolled off the assembly line in 1962. But the costs is more than amortized over the years. The know-how of maintenance plus the onboard electronics that shed tons of weight when replacing old components for modern ones denies it to retire. The last upgrade is taking place right now. The planes are receiving new Rolls-Royce F-130 engines that already power the Boeing 717, Gulfstream and Global Express, thus giving the B-52 the ability to operate safely for 100 years, which will be an absolute record. In addition, the new pneumatic systems and electrical generators are being implemented. It's amazing. A combat platform like this is something unbelievable even for ships, which usually manage to operate for 60-70 years in a precarious way. There are much older boats in operation today, but as floating museums or historic ships, not real combat units. B-52s cannot penetrate airspace defended by modern systems, that is true. For this mission, the Air Force has the B-2 Spirit, but the B-52 proves to be very useful in asymmetrical combat, which is when the enemy is unable to take down the attackers or when the air superiority is established. In these two cases, they are still and will remain absolutely deadly. Subscribe now to get more content like this so you value my work and put food on my table. Comment below how many years do you think that the B-52s will be in service. More than 100 is for sure. I read all the comments and you help me a lot by liking the video so the channel grows, okay? So I see you in the next video.